r/AskReddit. What are some moments in movies that made you go, oh, it doesn't work like that? My dad was a pipe engineer for 35 years. Every time he watches the Titanic, when Jack is handcuffed to the pipe, he has to point out to everyone in the room how the curved elbow pipe in the shot didn't exist at the time. The correct setup should have been two straight pieces soldered together to make a corner pipe. I love him and his obscure dad facts. Rolling out of a speeding car. Nah man, you're about to look like you made out with a cheese grater. Also related to cars in movies. Not every car is easily driftable. Don't you dare bullshit me, Mr. Hitman's Bodyguard, into believing that you can drift a Ford minivan in the same way as Ken Block. Almost any scene involving someone being shot or stabbed. As a cop, I've dealt with many stabbing victims. People don't just drop like sacks of potatoes when they are stabbed or have their throats slit. I once had to respond to an incident where two guys got into a knife fight. Ended up having to help keep pressure on wounds as we waited for paramedics, and he pulled through. His neck was wide open, and he had 23 punctures in his abdomen and arms, but he was still energetic and down to fight. When it comes to gunshots, you're not going to instantly drop unless something vital is hit: heart, brain, ECT. Makes me laugh a little when watching movies and bad guys drop dead when they are shot or cut in any way by the good guys. Pretty much any scene that involves biologists. Look, the DNA is a perfect match. As the computer superimposes two identical graphics that are basically just the symbol for DNA. And the fact that it takes them a few seconds to get the results. And the only PPE the person running it is wearing is a pair of nitrile gloves. Not even a ducking lab coat. I'm looking at you, Dexter. Like, yeah, the DNA matches. I bet every sample you run matches, because all of it has your DNA in it, because you are eating a sandwich in the lab. I used to work in a lab that tracked the migration pattern of birds by sampling DNA from collisions with planes. Yes, this thing exists. One time the lab got a result from one of the collisions, and it seemed like the plane had collided with a chicken at 2 kilometer height. Apparently the pilot ate a chicken sandwich on the plane wing. Avalanches, particularly when someone gets buried and then just bursts out of the snow unharmed. Avalanche debris sets like concrete, you're not getting out without help. And most deaths/injuries occur from being bashed up during the slide, so you're not likely to emerge unscathed if it's big enough to bury you. A fake trauma occurs from terrain traps, not necessarily the size. In most more deaths are from trauma, whereas in Europe, where above tree line terrain is much more accessible, fatalities are typically deep burials. Also, sound triggering avalanches is a big one. It was only when I began living in an avalanche danger zone that I learned sound caused avalanches weren't real. The Simpsons lead to me. Crawling through air ducts. Most aren't that big. Or they aren't that strong to not bend or break at all. They are also incredibly filthy. I have taken out enough ductwork to know that you could almost create another person with how many skin cells end up in your air ducts. I also am not doubting the strength of the large threaded supports some ductwork has. I'm doubting the strength of the 20 gauge metal to not end bend in the slightest under the weight of a full grown man. Pumping the shotgun every time you mean business. You're just ejecting fresh shells onto the floor. Especially when it's a break action double barrel shotgun. In Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. in one of the beginning episodes, Ward somehow pumps his double barrel shotgun. In Birds of Prey, every time Huntress reloaded her crossbows it sounded like a double barrel shotgun snap. I don't know too much about modern crossbows and very little about shotguns, but it just sounded like stock sound effects every time. 90% of the depictions of women going into labor. It's rarely mom feels fine all day, suddenly has one sharp contraction, water immediately breaks, and makes a puddle on the floor. Everyone I know who's given birth has had at least a few hours contracting before the water breaking, if it breaks at all, and then it can be even longer before you're in active labor. I'm a labor doubler. Was looking for this answer. Most of the time the water doesn't break until the pushing phase. Add to that, movies portray mom feeling fine all day, has sudden sharp contraction, and then everyone is freaking out to rush her to the hospital. First, you shouldn't do this. Second, most hospitals are just going to send you home. Labor is generally a long process. There are exceptions. But, especially for first-time moms, it is going to be a long while. There is no reason to rush to the hospital. And early labor the contractions are bearable and mom can go about her day as she has them. She isn't being stopped in her tracks as she has them, and moaning and groaning with each one. That comes later. Labor in movies and on TV is ridiculous. An explosion nearby and everyone talks and hears fine. I love that scene and the other guys about this. On a related note, when people are blown back by an extremely close explosion and just walk away afterward. Yeah, no, the changes in pressure are going to cause organ hemorrhage and rupture, your lungs are going to pop and your bowels will spill open. Mother of God, real life is so unfun. Our hero is beaten, stabbed and shot. Next scene he wakes up bandaged in the hospital. Within seconds, he yanks out all the tubes and wires, jumps out of bed, finds his suddenly clean clothes, and rushes out to continue his quest. In the next scene he's full of energy as he pursues his foe, and while his face may have a single scratch or bandage cut, usually above one eye, there's no sign of what would ordinarily be a yellow-purple swollen pulpy mess with blood-red eyes. In Interstellar, when they have combines running through a field of green corn, they spent a ton of time getting little details of astrophysics right, then fell flat on their face in the depiction of farming. And the best part is, I read somewhere that they actually did grow and harvest that corn to pay for some costs of the movie, so it's not like they didn't know how harvesting actually works. Yeah, but the film's on a schedule, and they don't have time to wait a few months for the corn to ripen. Every time they perform CPR in a movie. Bonus points if the victim wakes up immediately and is totally fine and talking. For Eli ducking, hate that so much. CPR doesn't work and everyone looks all saddens and cry for like 20 to 30 seconds. Then the character lunges their head/body up and lets the water out or whatever. Bonus docu movie points if the person doing CPR is in love with them and says something like, "No, I can't live without you." And they wake up when the person cries and they say something like, "You don't have to." Cheesy as duck and stupid. Or the super hammer punch to the chest in one last ditch effort that saves them. It's always a pet peeve of mine when in movies, they're working on a computer and the thing is constantly chirping and beeping with some kind of dumb sci-fi looking interface to it. Like, dude, we all have computers now. We all know software doesn't do that, and if it did it would be annoying as hell. I've even seen scenes where they are clearly using Photoshop or something similar, and it's constantly making little sci-fi noises. Or the classic hackerman, 5 seconds of rapidly pressing random keys, typing something that's not even into any kind of input, pop-ups appearing faster than the human eye can follow. I watched a movie once where geologists ignored signs of a massive natural disaster, blaming it on sensors. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I feel like real scientists don't hesitate to double check. If they don't trust their sensors, why use them? Cause the site was a helicopter's flight away from the research center, I guess. When a baby is born, and it's a beautiful, squeaky clean 3 to 6 month old twice the size of a newborn. They are tiny, goo covered, swollen purple aliens in real life. There's an episode of Royal Pains where a girl gives birth and this child they decided to be the newborn is, I swear, literally a toddler. It's so bad I can't even be angry, it's just hilarious. The protagonists and antagonists fighting on the streets and not giving a shit about thousands of people dying while the cars explodes and buildings falls. The extent that people can get punched in the face and just keep going. No one is having Jason Bourne style fights and able to keep going for as long as they all do. Even if you're blocking / dodging every hit, just throwing punches for more than 30 seconds in a row is exhausting without conditioning. Real fights wouldn't end with a cocky one-liner. The winner is going to be gasping for breath and probably only slightly less hurt than the loser. It always takes me out of the movie when say someone will be like, "You'll never believe what's on the news." Put it on. Their TV is off. They turn the TV on, and it's on the exact station of said news crew, at the exact moment they are talking about I said topic. That's not how it works. And it could be anything. Not just news. They turn on the TV and it just so happens to be on what they're looking for. Just a small aspect of television / movies that takes me out of it, and I'm always like, that's not how this works. Lol. The real scene should be, "You'll never believe the news." Then everyone pulls out their own phone and searches social media and or Google for whatever small grain of information the instigator can give them.